Welcome back to the Horror Vault. Amelia Dyer, also referred to as the Ogre of Reading, is a well-known or infamous figure. Hundreds of babies are thought to have been murdered by Amelia. But how? Even more crucially, why? Amelia had a somewhat rich upbringing. Samuel Hobley, a shoemaker, and his wife Sarah had a child in 1837. Of the 5 kids, Amelia was the youngest. She was born and raised in Pyle Mars, an English town just east of Bristol. Amelia was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to learn how to read and write because she came from a respectable family. She eventually discovered a love for literature. Compared to the other young girls from her village, her future appeared to be significantly more promising. So how did Amelia's destiny change, and how did it go wrong? Little Amelia endured some horrifying events, which may have, in some way or the other, influenced how she developed into the woman she became. Amelia took on the role of her mother's primary caregiver after the death of her older sister, Sarah Ann, in 1841, when she was just 6 years old. Amelia also lost a younger sister who was only a few months old in 1845, only 4 years after she experienced her first loss. Amelia was forced to care for her sick mother for the majority of her childhood, witnessing her violent fits and deplorable condition until the mother passed away in 1848, when Amelia was about 11 years old. Amelia spent a while in Bristol, living with an aunt after her mother passed away. After Samuel, Amelia's father, passed away in 1859, her eldest brother was left in charge of running the household business. There was not much keeping Amelia and her brothers together because both of her parents had passed away. She then relocated to a residence on Bristol's Trinity Street. There, she first met George Thomas, the man she later married. Even in their day, the Thomas family had a unique dynamic because while age gaps between partners were common, George was roughly 35 years older than his wife Amelia. When they got married, George was 59 and Amelia was 24 years old. To close the gap, they both lied about their ages on the marriage certificate. After marrying George and having spent her entire childhood as the family's primary caregiver, Amelia started her education as a nurse. Amelia was introduced to a network of individuals through her education who told her about simpler ways to make money, particularly baby farming, a routine that other nurses in that time period found to be common. Amelia had a very successful career and a happy marriage at the time, so she did not see the need for this. The Thomas couple welcomed Ellen Thomas, a young girl, into their family a few years after they got married. Amelia was forced to stop working as a nurse as a result, so that she could concentrate on taking care of the baby and herself. Amelia and her daughter had to face the harsh realities of life on their own after George passed away in 1869. Amelia, who was now a widow with a young child to take care for, was desperate to find a job that would pay her enormous sums of money quickly. She was fortunate enough to have what she needed thanks to the society and era she lived in. Women who had given birth to children outside of marriage were subjected to stigma during the Victorian era. The law freed men from having to contribute financially to raising these kids, which made the situation worse. This, in turn, left the mothers with no income to care for their children. This was either done indefinitely or until the mothers were established enough to take their children home, for a fee that could range from £5 for a client who was desperate, trying to avoid shame, to £80 if the child was born to respectable people who wanted to keep the affair a secret. The unfortunate turn of events was that these baby farmers were more concerned with the money than they were with the welfare of the kids under their care. Amelia, who was desperate to make money, jumped on the baby farming bandwagon and started running newspaper ads. She even decided to take in and care for expectant mothers in exchange for a one-time payment. However, she claimed in her advertisements to be married and that a respectable marriage would give these kids a secure and loving home. Amelia's customers do not appear to have recognized this fallacy because they were just eager to get the kids out of their hands. And so Amelia's business started to take off. However, given that Amelia later married Bristol native and brewery laborer William Dyer in 1872, it's possible that at some point her claims might have been true. The couple had 2 children together, Mary Ann and William Samuel. Even though it's just a rumor, many people think Amelia's marriage with Dyer and the subsequent birth of their 2 children were all done to increase her stature in the baby farming industry. Amelia ultimately left her husband, which further fueled these rumors. Baby farmers back then frequently starved the infants under their care until they died. The more cruel ones would make the kids take drugs which had opium in it. These medications were frequently used to keep hungry, noisy babies quiet and sedated. This practice would enable the caregivers to keep any profits after the baby passed away. Amelia came to the conclusion early on in her career as a baby farmer that it was unwise to wait for infants to starve to death in the collect. She consequently decided to go one step further with the practice by killing the babies within weeks, and in some cases, just days of receiving them. After that, she was able to report them dead to a physician. She was able to keep almost all of the payment she received for caring for the babies using this strategy. Unhindered, Amelia continued using her approach until 1879, when a doctor began to wonder about the number of infants in her care who were reported as dead. Unexpectedly, Amelia received a light sentence for neglect after only 6 months of hard labor. After being freed, Amelia resumed her baby farming endeavor. She understood that reporting infant deaths to the authorities would only get her into more trouble. She started avoiding this procedure and dumping the babies' bodies on her own. She would wrap the infant in paper, fasten a brick to the child, and cast the covered body into a river. Over time, she started murdering the babies almost immediately. When she returned home after collecting the child, she would tie a piece of white dressmaking tape around the infant's neck and watch as they slowly died. This new habit kept Amelia out of trouble with the authorities. To be completely safe, whenever Amelia suspected she was going to get into any form of trouble, she would fake a mental illness or break down and be admitted into asylums for mental instability. She quickly established herself as a regular in these facilities. Whenever she felt trouble was coming, she vanished from her duties as a baby farmer. If you're wondering how Amelia got around the system and deceived psychiatrists, it was all due to her prior work as an asylum nurse. She was familiar with how things operated in these institutions. When she was ready to leave, Amelia knew what to do to be able to be discharged. Amelia soon realized that there would be other difficulties she would face as she carried on with her evil scheme. Amelia felt uncomfortable when mothers in some situations demanded to be reunited with their children, so she devised a plan. Amelia would give the mother of a murdered baby a different child if the mother of the murdered baby desired to be reunited with her child. This method, however, was not foolproof, though, as it resulted in her getting into some trouble in 1890, when the woman in question was a nanny from a reputable family. The governess was suspicious when she came to see her child, so she looked for a birthmark on the baby's hips to make sure it was hers. Since the birthmark was nowhere to be found, and the police was once more pursuing Amelia, she either experienced or pretended to experience another mental breakdown. To prevent this from happening again and putting her in danger of getting into trouble or risking losing business due to rumors and suspicion, Amelia started moving cities frequently and created a number of aliases. Evelina Mormon, then 25, became a mother of an illegitimate child in January 1896 when she gave birth to a girl. She had plans to return to work and eventually claim her daughter. Evelina advertised her need for a respectable woman to look after Doris. She coincidentally placed her advertisement next to Amelia's, who had since become Mrs. Harding in the newspaper, and the two got in touch. Evelina preferred to pay a weekly fee for the care of her daughter rather than the one-time fee, but Amelia insisted on receiving the one-time payment. Evelina agreed and paid a one-time fee of £10 along with a box of clothes for her daughter out of desperation and lack of other options. Amelia acknowledged Evelina's worry and assured that she was welcome to come at any time to see her daughter. Nevertheless, she misled Evelina about her intended destination for the baby. Amelia informed Evelina that they had arrived safely and that everything was fine in a letter after picking up the baby and returning to her house, but Evelina never got a response when she wrote back. After settling into her home, Amelia killed the baby using her infamous white tape, putting an end to the poor baby's brief and frail life. It wasn't until much later, when Amelia was under investigation, that Evelina was able to recognize the baby's remains and some of her baby's clothes from Amelia's apartment. An object with a brick was pulled from the river on March 30th, 1896. A man opened the package and discovered a strangled baby's body with tape wrapped around her neck and called the police. A street address was written in one of the corners of the pieces of paper used to wrap the body. As one of the police officers noted, the authorities sprang into action and searched through the river after being horrified by the severity of the crime. To everyone's horror, more baby bodies were found. In addition, their necks were bound with white edging tape. Amelia did not realize that her actions were being discovered and looked into at the time. The situation was maintained by the police. In their investigation, they made an extra effort to be cautious in order to prevent Amelia from becoming suspicious and escaping, particularly because they required more proof to connect her to the murders. The authorities closely watched Amelia as the investigation developed and were able to arrange a fake appointment for her to talk about her services with a potential client. Amelia Dyer, then 59 years old, was unaware on April 4th, 1896. When she arrived to meet a client, she was greeted by two police officers who then arrested her. When they looked through her apartment, they discovered baby clothes, newspaper adoption advertisements, and letters negotiating adoptions. Despite the fact that no bodies were discovered, the house also reeked of decaying remains. To top it all off, the police discovered a white tape that was used to fasten the infants' necks. Only 11 days had passed since Evelyn Marmon gave Dyer her daughter. She recognized her baby's remains, and the grieving mother had been requested to appear for questioning. Amelia entered a guilty plea to the murder of Evelina's child on May 22, 1896, with her only defense being insanity. Amelia's claims of insanity were dismissed as anticipated, along with the defense's claim that each of her mental breakdowns occurred at the same time, when she was most likely to face consequences for her actions. The jury found Amelia guilty in just a few minutes, and she received a death by execution sentence. Amelia filled 5 exercise books in the days leading up to her execution, with what she allegedly described as her last genuine confession. As a result of suspicions, Amelia's daughter and son-in-law were also accused of being complicit in her murders. She pleaded on their behalf though, insisting that they were innocent and unrelated to her actions. Amelia was executed by hanging at Newgate Prison in London on June 10, 1896. Just prior to being executed, she said, "I have nothing to say," at precisely 9 a.m. At the time of her death, Amelia was around 59 years old, making her the eldest woman hanged in Great Britain between 1844 and 1955. She's estimated to have killed hundreds of infant kids.